Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Power Women Summit. I'm your host, Taylor Strecker, and today joining me are the brilliant, creative, genius minds behind the top podcast in their realm, the Toast Queens, Jackie and Claudia Oshry. Welcome. Hey, girls, hey.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you for having us.
Well, you are the queen of queens, so it's only right to have you talk about this.
I just want to say we are the biggest podcast in our realm, and our realm is very small.
It's like the House of Dragons realm, though, no?
Right.
No, for real. You guys have hands down one of the most popular podcasts and also daily podcasts in the female space, safe to say. Would you agree or disagree?
Yes, for sure. When you put all of those barriers ahead of it, female, daily, comedy,
Jewish,
pop culture, then yeah, we're number one.
No, for everybody watching, please explain what the Toast is if they don't know, where it lives, and also how you guys got your start.
Yes. So the Toast is a daily show. It is a Monday through Friday podcast that's obviously available anywhere you get your podcast, but also we do video our podcast too. So we have a web show where iCarly, and you can watch that on YouTube. And it started out as a pop culture show. Jackie and I very much love the daytime format. But when it came to actually finding daytime shows that were young and millennial and that actually covered topics that we were interested in learning about, the Kardashians, The Bachelor, the really important stuff, there really wasn't anything out there. So the initial premise of the show was to be very traditional morning show type of show. And really Jackie and I just creating the morning show that we wish to see in the world. And we're heading into our 6th season. So over the last couple of years, it's really evolved into more of a podcast, less of a web show, and more into a show that's obviously about pop culture. Our episodes about an hour and 15 minutes. And I would say 45 of those minutes are definitely hardcore pop culture, TV recap, books, things in popular culture. But then also just Jackie and I sharing our lives. Jackie's a mom. So sharing bits and pieces of ourselves while also talking about the things that we are just dying to dive into and recap.
Yeah, the things that we're passionate about. And also what we find is the things that kind of unite people, and they're just fun conversation fodder most of the time, pretty harmless, and just a fun way to spend an hour and 15 with your girls, whether you're commuting or you're working from home or you're watching us on TV with your baby. Everybody kind of comes at the habit from a different lens, but we just like being part of people's everyday and something that people can count on
and look forward to.
Would you say that there's a formula to the way that you guys approach the show? You just said 115 daily,
yes.
Pop culture and also sharing your life. So is there some sort of mathematical magic wizard spoon that you use?
Great question. It kind of happens naturally. I feel when we first started the show, like Claudia said, we were trying to create the morning show that we wanted to see. And through just the power, things happen, letting the chips fall where they may, the show became much more popular as a podcast. So we started being more podcast centric. We used to do little bits, where you have to be watching in order to enjoy it. But now that we know what percentage of our audience listens as a podcast, those things have sort of gone by the wayside. But what we do more of is just having interesting conversations and less gimmicky type of stuff. I feel we've noticed maybe since I've moved, Claudia and I are catching up every day with each other. And so the top of the show really focuses more on us and our personal lives than it ever did. I feel in the past few years, maybe we did 3 to 5 minutes before we jumped into the stories. These days, probably 20 minutes before we jump into the stories. So it always follows a natural progression. Of course, we take feedback, hear what people want more of, whether it's TV recaps, where do they want the TV recaps at the end of the episode, because not everybody watches the same shows. So it's always constantly changing, but we find that it follows a natural order of things.
Jackie, that's such a good point. I totally forgot that initially we weren't even a podcast. We were an Instagram live and Facebook live show.
Facebook Live.
I remember
our first episode of our first show was only Facebook Live. And after a few episodes, people were like, this would be a great podcast. I want to listen as a podcast. So we're like, oh, okay, we have the audio. We'll just upload it to SoundCloud. And it was always an afterthought. And now it is the forethought.
So I feel people always say, especially people that want to get into podcasting, right? They're like, well, it needs to be perfect. And I have to have the perfect studio and the perfect co-host and the perfect rundown, if you will. Do you think that it's just best to do it and commit to it and just figure it out as you go on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate that effort it takes to make a podcast. And I think most podcasts are weekly. So I think people think I could talk for 1 hour a week. It's nothing. And then they really underestimate how much work goes into it and end up, delaying episodes, never coming out with more than a couple episodes. I think the statistics on like podcasts that make it past 10 episodes is like a crazy amount.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of work that it actually is. And it's not just listening to your own voice and throwing something up. But I think a lot of people spend so much time like planning, strategizing, what should we do for this episode? And it's just like, get your episode out. Make sure your audio quality is more than decent, because that's like one thing podcast listeners are not okay with. Like, you have bad audio, is it a little scratchy? Like, they'll drag you to filth on the internet. Like, that's the one thing that has to be perfect.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, you'll find your footing when it comes to what you want to talk about, what the tone is. But like talking about a podcast, just do it.
Yeah, just do it. I think people who wait till everything's perfect, the perfect name, the perfect artwork, the perfect set, none of it needs to be perfect. Even, I know audio is so important and it's great to invest in great equipment, but we find when we're on the road, sometimes doing a voice note on our phone is actually much better audio quality than bringing some of the, easier, lighter weight mics that we have. And we don't like say, this time we're using this microphone, this time we're using phone, but we've never gotten a complaint when it's been phone audio, as long as it's equally between the two of us. So I feel like the barrier to entry is even lower than people might think that it is. And I feel like your podcast should always be improving. Your first episode should not be your best episode. You don't need to have everything great. And your second episode should be better than your first, because there were learnings from the first, and now for the second we're going to do this, and you keep building on it. To want that first episode to be perfect is
unreasonable.
It's unreasonable. It's also fruitless. It's kind of a waste of your time. You could have been spending all of that time building your audience. And people want to grow with you and see the changes that you're making and give you feedback. Oh, okay, this was the first episode and we're sort of piloting it all together.
Right.
Let's do this the next episode. So I really think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give to a podcaster starting out, is just start.
That's so true, because people feel really excited when they're part of the growth. I think one of the most popular things people say to us when they meet us is I've been watching since you guys used to sit behind those green and blue desks, which was our first set. It was hardly a set. It was literally it was turn. We've been through 50 sets, 50 microphones, and it's so cool because people are no, I was there when you guys used to sit in front of that wall of albums. So they're along for the journey with you, and expecting your first episode to be next level audio production like Meghan Markle's, it's not going to be like that.
Yeah. Also, something you guys are really good at too is pivoting, and I guess it's a part of evolving. But for example, like you said, don't worry about the name, just get it out there. But I will say, as somebody, Taste of Taylor, I hate the name of my podcast.
Rebrand.
And I know that you guys have, of course, you have had different names over the years, and you just recently did a rebrand. You were the Morning Toast. Now you are The Toast. Why did you do that rebrand, and how do you rebrand?
Okay. It's actually exactly what we were just saying. When we started the show, we wanted to be a morning show. So of course it's the morning blank, Good Morning America. We're Good Morning Millennials. Everything, we were really copying the morning show template. And over the years, as we've discussed, we've become more of a podcast. And The Toast sounds like the name of a media company that's not just so morning centric, because we've gotten away from some of that stuff. And now we're just an hour long, interesting podcast, and it's The Toast. And we've made the word toast what we want it to be. Even when we were originally naming the show, we wanted it to be the morning blank, and we could not settle on a word. A part of us knew that whatever word we chose, it would be the right word, because it becomes what you want it to be.
So it's not that whatever the name is what the name is. You actually
the name is what you make it.
There are some shows that have an amazing name, but they're not successful because their name is so great. Maybe that got people to listen to one episode, but if they're listening to the next episode, it's because that episode was really good. But I do think sometimes a bad name can deter people too. So there is import there.
Stop telling people I hate Taste of Taylor, or should I change
Taste of Taylor?
I like it too.
And you guys, you guys know you're younger than me, but I have always looked up to you. And that's an important thing too, in terms of networking in the podcasting sphere, is that I think it's important to know when you're the expert and when other people are. And so I defer to you guys a lot. We just recently had a brainstorming conversation, the three of us, which I bow down. You guys are truly so gifted at it's not even just the talent, it's the marketing talent as well. But yeah, so I hold your opinion in high regard. So
can I say what was so interesting about, we didn't intend to rebrand. We set out to get a new logo made We weren't changing our name. And we had this creative agency working with us. We had these like really long calls. They really wanted to get to know Jackie and I and like the ethos of our brand. And we kept referring to the show as The Toast. And he was like, let me ask you a question. Why isn't your show called The Toast? And Jackie and I looked at each other. We were like, oh my God, that I feel like is the perfect, that's like an ideal situation to be in for a rebrand. We didn't need to change our name. It just, when he said it, I was like, duh, everyone called it The Toast. Nobody called it The Morning Toast, but that was our name. And then when he said it, that was like, I think that's like what, you know, an advertiser's dream is, like that would happen to you.
Yeah, and that it's such a natural progression. You don't have to change the way that you speak and remember to say it one way because that's how we've been saying it.
Let's like Target changing their name to Target.
Right.
It would be fine.
But I think Taste of Taylor is great, but it is natural to like get kind of sick of something because you see it the most, but I think it's perfect. We need a Taste of Taylor.
Thank you. That means everything.
The show also, it perfectly describes what your show is, which is ideal.
They're getting a taste because I have my daily show on Patreon. So the podcast with Dear Media is a taste of what I do on a daily basis.
A mere taste.
Also, for people who don't know, you guys are sisters. They're not married. They're actually sisters.
Some people think we're married too.
I was going to say, no, that's my brand. Don't come into my life. Thank you very much. Although I know Claudia's going to try to steal my wife from me one day.
I am. She's the best.
I know. She's amazing. So what's it like to work with a partner, a consistent partner, and also a family member? Do you think it helps or it's actually a disadvantage?
No, it's totally helpful. I think one of the really common questions we get asked is like, how do you work with family? And I'm like, how do you not? Like, how do you have an honest conversation with someone who you're not related to and knows like, no matter what I say, if I speak, you know, I don't say the right thing, like she's going to love me no matter what. I generally don't know how people have business partners who are not their sisters. I think a lot of people see our situation as like, oh my God, I could never. But for us, it is the only thing that works. Like, and I've never had a business partner who wasn't my sister. And I'm thankful for that because like, this is how I was meant to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't imagine like the amount of time you spend the amount of time that we spend like talking to each other, working on the show. And like, we disagree a lot. And I can't, like, if it was someone who wasn't a family member, you know, every disagreement would need to be like a formal email complaint. And it's like, we don't have time for that. We need to be able to like speak candidly to each other and not have hurt feelings. But we also like we're not like disrespectful towards one another in general, unless we're just like messing around and being wenchy. Right. But we just like, it's so refreshing to just like work with someone who you know how to talk to them, you know what like their buttons are that you shouldn't push, and also that you can trust 100%.
Implicitly.
I feel like there are so many instances of people who like build a business together and things go awry, but I know that, you know, and I'm sure maybe one day someone will be playing this clip as
when we like hate each other
in the business when we split up.
Right.
But I trust Claudia. I believe she trusts me, and it makes it more exciting to put everything you have into a business with someone when you don't have to like watch your back from that person.
Right.
And it also, there's like a level of calm that you have knowing like your business really can't ever break up. Like we have other sisters, like we could never.
We could never.
Our husbands work together. Like we could never.
It's the best. I will say I am very envious of the dynamic that you guys have because it's really hard. I mean, I've worked with like long-term co-hosts when I was at Sirius, and it can get really dicey. You know what I mean? Yes. So having family that it works well with, it's incredible. Now, also, you guys are sisters, but you are different. Like I even heard recently, Jackie, when you were on Stassi's podcast, she was talking about like there's people who are a Claudia and people who are a Jackie, and she was saying she's a Jackie and I'm a Claudia. So, and I actually, when we just recently had like a brainstorming meeting for my rebrand, and again, thank you guys for that. And we'll get like TBD on what's to come. But I will say that I noticed, because I know Claudia so well, and like I was talking to Jackie in a way that I've never really like we've had a conversation before, and I realized that you guys really do have different strengths. So can you explain to the audience like what those different strengths are?
I was just about to say that also about working with family. It's like, I know Claudia inside and out. I know what her strengths are and where I should be like, okay, this is a Claudia thing, and vice versa with me. And at this point, like we have them all like mapped out on a list because it's so simple. But Claudia is just like the funniest person ever. She's so outgoing. Like whenever we're in a meeting, like we're leading with Claudia. We are not leading with your awkward girl here. I feel like she makes everyone just like feel so comfortable. And that's such a strength and an asset. I think that's also why the show is as successful as it is, because Claudia is just like that really welcoming presence and force.
I will say, and no insult to Claudette over here, but like also Jackie, you are so smart.
It's smart. Crazy. No, that's what I was going to say. Like Jackie is psychic. I know I sound crazy. Jackie's, I don't know if I can curse. She's fucking psychic. Like if I will literally not leave my house without calling Jackie. Like she'll tell me, no, it's not a good day to leave the house. Like she's so smart. She can really, like, if you ever need advice, I always tell people, I'm sure Jackie finds it annoying. I'm like, let me ask Jackie for you. I'm like, why don't you call Jackie? Like she really, literally Taylor's asked me questions. I'm like, honestly, like, let's just call Jackie. She's so smart and she like thinks before she speaks. And I think like, if I was just the captain of this ship by myself, like we would have been done long ago. Like Jackie knows when to act, knows when to listen, knows when to wait. Like she's really so smart. And I think like so much of the strategy and the survival, like podcasts come and go. Like we've been doing this now we're going on to our 6th season. Like I think a huge part of the longevity is like Jackie's brain, because she really knows, like she has this impeccable way of just like exclusively making the right decision. It's insane. I know. Whereas I literally make the wrong one every time.
That's so funny. A lot of my method though is just thinking about like if there's something that we're weighing and it's like, what's the worst case scenario? I think about what's the worst thing that could come of this. Okay. And is that risk worth whatever the potential reward is? That's what is. And sometimes it's like, if that happens, I'm okay with that because this great thing is happening.
So it's not like a fear-based decision making. It's more like, think about worst case scenario. It's probably not that bad. Could we survive it? And then that gives you the courage to go through with the decision.
Yes. Or sometimes it's like, what's the worst case scenario? Let's not.
Right. How often though, out of like 10 decisions you make in business, how often do you say, let's not?
That's a good question.
I feel like a lot, honestly.
I feel like a lot too.
Really? Mm-hmm. Like, and are we talking like content, or are we talking like business, like in like the guts of the business decisions?
Oh, great question. I think there's a bit of both, sometimes with content, but I feel like for the most part, when we feel really strongly about something like that, the point of our show is to be ourselves. And so if there's something that's like, we're bottling up, like we will speak it. So
even if it's just one of us, because like Jackie and I are so different, like we do cover weirdly, like, especially now that Jackie's a mom, like I think our differences are even more highlighted. So if one of us feels really strongly about a topic or like a piece of content we want to discuss, like we're going to go with, if one person wants it, we do it.
That's our policy with having guests on the show. Like someone might be pitched to us and I really want them, but Claudia doesn't like watch the show or care. But if one person wants it and like wants it enough, then we're doing it.
Same with like an advertiser.
But with the business stuff, I feel like we get like some opportunities here or there. And there's a lot of things to weigh. One, of course, is like worst case scenario. Like if this is a risk, what's the worst thing that could happen? Another question is like, is it worth the time and energy that we need to put forth? What are we getting out of this? I feel like sometimes we're always like working for other people. And it's like, well, what's our net value that we're taking away?
Yeah, because I think like our thinking has changed over the last couple of years. Because I think for a while, like we thought of our podcast, and I think everyone thought of podcasting in general as like a stepping stone, like a TV show or a reality show. Like it was always this thing, like get an audience and then we could do something bigger. And I think a few years ago, Jackie and I realized like, no, actually, like let's invest in the podcast. Like let's not use the podcast to get somewhere. Like let's let the podcast be the somewhere, and like make the company and like the basically like a media company that we would hope to like give us a TV show. Like let's become that company instead of just like hoping somebody will hand us something. And so like a few years ago, we made the conscious decision to like to bloom where we're planted, like to be happy with what we have. And I think that was one of the best decisions. Like I don't believe and the growth of podcasting in the last few years only proved us right, you know?
Well, I will say too, like as a fellow podcaster and as a friend of yours and as a fan of the show, I love the toast. I've been a guest on it before, but I also, and your daily clips on social are like literally everything.
That's all Claudia. That was a Claudia idea that has changed our business. It has. Because she is a relevant content queen that she is.
It's because I'm so thirsty for TikTok fame and content. I was like, Jackie, we need to make content and we'll put it on Reels. And honestly, like if you're not making vertical content out of your podcast, like you're irrelevant. And I think like we started doing it. Jackie, when did we do it? Like January?
No, this summer.
Like honestly, podcasting like got really like shifted during COVID. Like so many podcasts that were really big before COVID, like kind of fizzled out. And so many that were like starting out are huge now.
And so many people started podcasts and are already out of the game. That's the craziest.
Right.
So I feel like we could have like ended up as like part of the
graveyard,
podcast, like,
in the podcast graveyard,
washed out post-COVID. And I think like our insane commitment to vertical video like was one of the things that like literally ensured that didn't happen.
Also, let's talk about you guys working remotely now.
Yeah,
like, that's a really big thing, and something that a lot of podcasters. I mean, I used to be in like my Patreon show was live, and in the pandemic, it became more of a podcast versus like a live show. So but you guys are still live. That's the thing, but you're remote now. So do you think it's helped? It's hurt? It's just like,
let me tell you how when Jackie said she was moving, I was like, oh my God, I have to start filling out my resume. I'm like, this show is not going to last. Like, I honestly, of course, I would never stop her because she was doing what she wanted to do, what was best for her family. But I was like, this is officially the end of the era. Like, we did it and it'll never be the same. And I was like, I didn't even think I told Jackie. I was like, I'm like, we're fucked.
No, I was like quaking too. That was my biggest hesitation about moving, is how it would affect the show. And I figured that the show would, be the show. We'd be able to do remote episodes. We had done them before, like during COVID and stuff, but they were never as great as our moments together. So I was just like, okay, this will be like a new era. But we worked so hard on, one, the quality of it looking good, and two, like our ability to talk with each other. I feel like a lot of people do remote over Zoom. Zoom is terrible for remote podcasts. If you're doing it, stop. There are so many better options out there, like a quick Google search. So there are platforms that are meant for remote podcasting. Like right now we're using an amazing platform. I've never even used it before. And like,
me neither.
There's no awkward silences. Like, it's gorgeous. And so Claudia and I do a combination of things so that there is no delay when we're talking to each other. And because of that, we haven't lost the timing that like people come to love about our show. But also, Claudia and I know each other so well. We know the way our sentences sound. I know when Claudia's done talking, she knows that I'm still talking, but she wants to talk over me. Like, because we know each other so well, it really works out that like this dance that we were always doing while we do the show, like we are able to do it remotely. And I also think on the content side, like me moving, I used to be with Claudia like 24 hours of the day, and we used to like have dinner together the night before. But like now I have kind of a different life, a separate life, and like a lot of new mom stuff, home owning stuff. And I feel like I have so much more things to share from a content perspective. And I feel like a lot of our listeners now feel more seen than just having like two city girlies who are doing the exact same things.
Right.
No, I have to tell you, and I never thought that this was going to be the case. I'm like shocked and so happy to be saying this. Like, I think our show has never been better in terms of quality, like audio, video. I think when the video, it took us, don't get us wrong, it took us a few weeks of like a little blurry, a little lighting is weird. I flew down to Florida and like we worked on it. I think like from an audio visual perspective, but then also content wise, like our show has never been stronger. And I did not think that was going to be the case when we went remote. I was so nervous. I was like, I'm going to have to go back to
marketing.
Yeah.
I'm going to call up AOL.
I'm going to call up everyone I've ever worked for. Take me back. I'm sorry. But I don't know what it is. I think it's honestly, that's a huge benefit of being sisters. It's like, no matter how far you are from your sister, you always love your sister. You always know your sister like the back of your hand. It's different when it was like a co-host who moved to Florida, like friends fizzle out. Jackie, you can't fizzle me, bitch. I'm here forever.
There's no fizzling. And we get together at least once a month to do a week of shows together. So I always thought when we did that the shows would be like so different than the remote shows. And it would be like, yes, everyone's so excited we're back together. But it's really the same. And I feel like the people who listen as podcast listeners cannot tell the difference because you don't see.
Right.
Yeah, we have a lot of listeners who aren't like, keeping up with us 24/7. They just like the podcast and in like a very normal, healthy way. And they like they'll comment on my TikTok, be like, wait, Jackie moved? Like they won't even know.
Right.
And that's the biggest compliment someone could give, literally.
The biggest. I met a toaster this weekend and she was saying, I didn't know that I was in Florida. She's like, I didn't know that you moved down here. Like I listened to the show. I was like, that's the nicest thing you could say.
Literally.
And then we're running out of time. But before we say goodbye, real quick, I have to ask you about the move to Dear Media. It was like a big deal. It felt super major. As somebody who's been in the Dear Media family, I was so excited that you guys were coming
Honestly,
over,
part of the reason like we ended up doing the deal is literally because of you.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, tell me more.
There's good people.
There's good people. No, honestly,
I actually
like
think that's the core. One of the biggest reasons was the good people, like obviously the Bostics, but the like you and just the Dear Media family, and we're family girls. We're like, we want to be a part of this family.
Yeah. And so when our most recent podcast contract was up, we like went to market and we were talking to like really, you know, the big agencies. I mean, the big networks. We were very like honored that everyone wanted to work with us. And we were pretty like maybe a few months into some conversations with some of the bigger networks, and Michael reached out and he was like, you guys are like free? You're free agents? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, can we send an offer? And I'm like, of course, like we'll look at anything. And the second we spoke to him, we didn't even get his offer yet. Me and Jackie like kind of knew that that's where we were going to go, because one, we like love Michael and Lauren so much. I think what they're doing is like so smart, and Dear Media is like really proven to be like a very successful and relevant media company. And we just like their values, their ethos. Like we knew the second, we hadn't even thought about it because we were like so excited to be with like those old school podcast agencies. We're like, oh my God, they like us. They really like us. And then Michael reached out and we knew before he even sent it that we were going to end up there. Like it was exactly where we were meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's been great.
I'm so happy you're over here. Also, I wanted to ask you, and I'm happy that we have a little bit of time to ask you real quick before I let you go, networking in the pod sphere. So I feel like, especially I came from radio. Radio is incredibly competitive. There's one time slot, like even Sirius kind of changed the game in that there was like actual multiple time slots on the same platform. That was very new, but still it was different. And I feel like kind of like the backbone of podcasting is the networking. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah. Whenever someone will say to me, like, what's the best way to grow my podcast? The best way to grow your podcast is to go on other podcasts. Yeah. And so in order to, you know, be booked on a show like the Taste of Taylor or whatever, you need those relationships. So I think a lot of people who have successful podcasts, it's because they're lovely people who have other podcasters on their show and will promote them, and then we'll go on their show to promote. Like it really is the best way to grow your show is to go on other shows that you admire and hope that the audience likes you enough. We're always asking people like, how did you hear about the Toast? And they'll be like, oh, I heard you on Taste of Taylor on or Good Morning with Taylor, your old Sirius show, or I heard you on Taste of Taylor. I saw you on Sassy's podcast. Like it's really the best way to get new listeners.
Yeah, because especially
so that means you have to be a nice person.
If it's in your category too, it's like, okay, you're targeting people who listen to podcasts and like the subjects that you talk about. Like you couldn't be more targeted to find new audience members. So that's great. And then also like once you're in the game, like it's so nice to just have friends in the space who do the same thing. And like even sometimes if you notice like a change in like an algorithm, or even with COVID, like podcast numbers, we're down for a period of time, and just talking to other people who are like, are your numbers shit too? Yeah. Okay. So it's not just us. Like, it's just nice to like have sounding boards and people to talk to about like this job that is very unique.
Yeah. And I have to say, like most of the people that we know who do what we do they don't like gatekeep. Like I have to like Kelty from Lady Gang, like was so helpful to me. Like I had so many questions because I really wanted my book to make New York Times bestsellers list, and she had done it and she had like investigated, she had all this research. She's like, here's what you have to do. You have to do this, go to indie bookstores. She was so helpful. She did not gatekeep one piece of information. Like it was so refreshing because not everyone's like that.
No.
But do you feel like when do you know when to tell everybody everything? And when do you know to keep things close to the chest though? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm sitting here being like, I don't gatekeep with a lot of people, but there are some people I definitely feel like I have to.
I think here's like a good measure. I feel like sometimes it's just like an information exchange, but when it feels like someone is using you or like stepping on you to get to the next step or to even get on your level, but there's no like camaraderie, there's no friendship. It's not like you're just sisters helping each other out.
Yeah.
When it feels usurious, like this person's just like doesn't want to do this piece of work, or they're not gonna, if they get to where they're trying to go, they're not gonna remember
you.
I feel like that's kind of the measure.
The bar. No, that's the perfect way of saying it. Like 100%.
Well, guys,
and
we're
then
out
there's
of
just
time.
people you like and you want to support.
Yeah. No, the thing is like, and that's what's so cool.
Like.
There's people you like and people you don't like. And Jackie and I like really like with you, like we have so many people who do what we do who were like our actual friends. Like I was at your house last night. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't matter. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Like, that's the joy of having friends who do this work. But you also have to be protective of your business a little bit and understand, like, not everyone wants to be your friend and come over to your house and watch Christmas movies, you know?
Like, some people just want to copy your homework and then, you know, get to a better college than you.
And get a better grade. Yeah.
Well, guys, we're out of time. I could talk to you for a million years, but I do have to just say before we go, you guys really have changed the landscape in so many different ways. I'm telling you, you're such pioneers. You really are. And I mean, even like hearing about the remote stuff, it's like I have for the last, how long have I known you guys for? How long have we been friends for?
Since I was in college.
6 years.
My God. Like, I have consistently learned from you guys every step of the way. And I really feel like you're changing conventional media. And I thank you for it because you're making it much more accessible. I worked in media in a time when it was like conglomerates and like, you know, monopolies and moguls, like literally running everything. And there was no room for a middle class in the entertainment industry. It was either like you were like nothing or, you know, Jennifer Aniston. And I feel like there has become like a really defined middle class in entertainment. And I think that upper middle class. And I think it's thanks to you guys, for real.
I never thought of it that way, but you're 100% right.
Yeah. You guys are pioneers. You
are. No, not about us, just about like the class.
The middle class.
Yeah, the upper middle class of media.
Exactly. Well, I love you, girlie, so much.
I love you.
Love you. Thank you. I'm excited to hear about your rebrand. Call me.
I know. We have to have another talk for sure.
I'm like, now I want to hear the results.
I know. Well, we're still, you know, feeling things around, but we'll get.
We're still working it out.
We're still working it out. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Taylor Strecker. Bye.